In this video, we investigate eternalism's first philosophical primacy issue, God, reality. This primacy issue represents 2,400 years of philosophical debate going back in history to Plato and Aristotle.
For over 2,400 years, Western civilization has been torn apart, divided into two camps, constantly in conflict with each other over a seemingly simple primacy issue between two of eternalism's three axioms. Plato and Aristotle set the stage for this fight between the two foundational branches of philosophy, metaphysics and epistemology, all over which has primacy existence or consciousness. Whose bucket is upside down and whose bucket is right side up? Plato's primacy of consciousness or Aristotle's primacy of existence?
Plato and other early Greek philosophers struggled with how to categorize the thoughts we conceive in our minds compared to the real physical world we observe, which is constantly changing.
For Plato, there were two worlds, not one. The sensible world of changing physical things that we apprehend by means of our senses, and the world of intelligible objects that we apprehend by means of our intellects or minds. The world of ideas had for him a superior grade of reality. The physical things that we perceive through our senses come into being and pass away, continually in flux, changing in one way or another. They have no permanence. The world of changing physical things is thus for Plato a mere shadow of the much more real world of ideas. When we pass from the realm of sense experience to the realm of thought, we ascend to a higher reality.
The Platonist school begins by accepting the primacy of consciousness, by assuming that reality must conform to the content of consciousness, that the presence of any notion in man's mind proves the existence of a corresponding referent in reality.
Plato's two worlds consist of a higher world of ideal, unchanging forms, and a lower world of imperfect, changing physical things. For Plato, everything in this lower physical world is an imperfect copy of the perfect idea present in the unseen world of forms. The imperfect physical copy is always changing in some way to try and meet its ideal nature. Aristotle was Plato's student for some 20 years. Aristotle turned his teacher's ideas upside down. Where Plato put mind first, Aristotle put reality first. Aristotle said existence has primacy over consciousness.
Aristotle is the champion of this world, the champion of nature, as against the supernaturalism of Plato. Denying Plato's world of forms, Aristotle maintains that there is only one reality, the world of particulars in which we live, the world men perceive by means of their physical senses. Universals, he holds, are merely aspects of existing entities, isolated in thought by a process of selective attention. The physical world, in his view, is not a shadowy projection controlled by a divine dimension, but is an orderly, intelligible, natural realm open to the mind of man.
The Renaissance artist Raphael captured this division between Plato and Aristotle in Raphael's famous artwork, The School of Athens. It depicts Plato pointing up to the heavens at his supernatural world of ideals, with Aristotle pointing down to earth at the tangible, practical world. Eternalism will show that Plato's primacy of consciousness is a false belief, inviting unprincipled willfulness, where those following this false philosophy attempt to become a law unto themselves, wanting reality to conform to their will. Eternalism will show that the primacy of existence is a true belief, inviting principled lawfulness, where those following this true philosophy attempt to learn the already existing laws of reality, abide by them, and abound in prosperity. Western civilization is still divided over this primacy issue today. Modern society finds itself in a philosophical house divided, in a war between religion and science, faith and reason, moral and practical. The traditional moral and religious worlds with origins in the Great Apostasy sided with Plato. Traditional Christianity kept Plato's two separate worlds by simply representing Plato's supernatural world of perfect forms as the consciousness of God. This God outside-the-box perspective represents the philosophical origins of Christianity's apostate creeds concerning the Godhead, where an absolute God performs supernatural miracles defying the laws of nature as a matter of divine will. The scientific and practical world sided with Aristotle with the discovering, measuring, proving, and observation of reality.
Tragically, all of the three great monotheistic religions place God over reality. Traditional Christianity declares God was outside reality and created reality ex nihilo, out of nothing. In theological terms, this is the absolutism of God. In philosophical terms, it is called the primacy of consciousness. Early Christian councils declared,
God, who by his almighty power at the beginning of time created from nothing both spiritual and corporeal creatures.
René Descartes said,
Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
Bishop George Berkeley said,
If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? The objects of sense exist only when they are perceived.
do you see the philosophical contradictions that a God outside the box inevitably causes? How do you describe a God who is outside of existence? If God created everything from nothing, then who is to blame for the obvious evil we see all around us? If an absolute God can change the rules of reality any way he wills, then why send Christ to die as part of the atonement to overcome a problem God created himself in the first place? Why not just change the rules of reality instead of sending Christ to perform the atonement? The Restoration flips the absolutism of God right side up, proclaiming instead the absolutism of reality. Eternalism claims that God creates things ex materia, which means organizing from already existing eternal element.
Man was also in the beginning with God. Intelligence, or the light of truth, was not created or made, neither indeed can be, for man is spirit. The elements are eternal, and spirit and element inseparably connected receive a fullness of joy. And when separated, man cannot receive a fullness of joy.
Joseph Smith said,
Hence we infer that God had materials to organize the world out of chaos, chaotic matter, which is element, and in which dwells all the glory. Element had an existence from the time he had. The pure principles of element are principles which can never be destroyed. They may be organized and reorganized, but not destroyed. They had no beginning and can have no end.
In putting structure to all of this, it is important to recognize that each of eternalism's gospel primacy issues has an identical equivalent in philosophical language. For example, when we say absolutism of reality in a gospel context, the philosophical equivalent is primacy of existence, which is also the same thing as eternalism's God inside the box framework. This means that God works within the laws of reality. This is the metaphysical equivalent of lawfulness. When we say absolutism of God in a gospel context, the philosophical equivalent is primacy of consciousness, which is also the same thing as the God outside the box framework opposite of eternalism. This means that God invents or alters the rules of reality any way he wills. This is the metaphysical equivalent of willfulness.
Our first true philosophical primacy issue pertains to the nature of God and reality. If you get God wrong, the odds are low you'll get anything else right. Elder Bruce R. McConkie said,
The greatest truth known to man is that there is a God in heaven who is infinite and eternal, that he is our Father in heaven, that he has a body of flesh and bones as tangible as man's, that he is a literal person, and that if we believe and obey his laws, we can gain the exaltation that he possesses. Now that is the greatest truth and the most glorious concept known to the human mind, and the reverse of it is the greatest heresy in Christendom.
Our first false philosophical primacy issue also pertains to the nature of God and reality. Elder Bruce R. McConkie said,
This first and chief heresy of a now fallen and decadent Christianity, and truly it is the father of all heresies, swept through all of the congregations of true believers in the early centuries of the Christian era. It pertained then, and it pertains now, to the nature and kind of being that God is. This new God, no longer a personal father, no longer a personage of tabernacle, became an incomprehensible, three-in-one spirit essence that filled the immensity of space. The adoption of this false doctrine about God effectively destroyed the true worship among men and ushered in the age of universal apostasy.
Consider the following chart with eternalism's primacy issues lined up in an orderly progression. Our first true philosophical primacy issue from metaphysics is the greatest truth known to mankind. Our first false philosophical primacy issue is the greatest heresy in traditional Christendom. This first primacy issue, dealing with the nature of God and reality, is the starting point for all of the other primacy issues to follow in a logical progression through their respective philosophical branches. As we move to the dependent branches of epistemology and ethics, logical consistency causes an increasing divide between the lawfulness of the Restoration and the willfulness of traditional Christianity. Unable to decide on a consistent set of principles, many people end up with a shotgun approach, picking and choosing various versions of the primacy issues whenever it suits them. Sometimes applying the primacy issues from below, choosing Plato for their moral and religious outlook. At other times, applying the primacy issues from above, choosing Aristotle for their practical day-to-day lives. This is the tragedy of mixed premises, which means a split personality, living with contradictions.
This is the junk heap of contradictions we mentioned earlier in the course, where people live their lives jumping the tracks here and there whenever it suits them, instead of being consistent. Throughout the work week, they live the yin, attempting to be practical, build careers, and the infrastructure of their lives, at the same time feeling guilty in the back of their minds for not being able to live their religion every day of the week. Then on Sunday, they show up to church, embracing the yang, and start the mixed cycle over again. Where does this approach lead? The individual junk heap of contradictions is just a small-scale version of the overall confused state of larger society. These personal mixed premises are just part of a much larger, long-standing war in Western civilization itself. Science and religion at war, reason and faith at war, practical and moral at war. If a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, how much more so is a double-minded society?
The tragedy of harboring contradictions is that one can never really be confident about anything. Principled thinking means taking a philosophical and theological stand against mixed premises. This means that once we have identified what we stand for, we consistently and courageously know what we stand against. This often means our principled thinking must go against popular opinion. This may require us to swim upstream against the current of popular opinion and political correctness. Identifying and eliminating mixed premises can be dangerous, especially in conversations with others who may have opposite viewpoints. There is only one thing more dangerous than identifying and eliminating contradictions. That is not identifying mixed premises, eliminating them, and instead trying to live with them.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to the Christian Eternalism YouTube channel and visit christianeternalism.org